Yo, what is up guys, Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Leigh Wood versus Mauricio Lara. Of course, Leigh Wood will be defending his WBA featherweight title. The fight takes place on the 18th of February, so this weekend, and it is being held in the UK at the Nottingham Arena and will be televised on DAZN. Honestly, to me this is like the only super interesting fight on the upcoming DAZN schedule. This is really the one I'm looking forward to be honest. The rest, I can really take or leave. But yeah, I am really looking forward to this fight. Stylistically, I think this one is going to gel extremely well, and quite frankly, I don't see this fight going the distance. I'd be surprised if this fight goes to points, I really will. I'm fully expecting somebody to get knocked out here, and you know, these are the best kind of fights. Very competitive on paper. I believe both guys have a chance of winning this fight, a realistic chance of winning this fight. And yeah, both guys can punch. Both guys have they've got their defensive vulnerabilities. And yeah, that makes this one a really interesting and potentially a very exciting fight. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's briefly break down the tale of the tape. Leigh Wood has a record of 26 wins, 2 defeats, 0 draws, 16 of his 26 wins coming by way of knockout. Mauricio Lara has a record of 25 wins, 2 defeats, 1 draw, 18 of his 25 wins coming by way of knockout. Leigh Wood is listed as 5'7" with a 67-inch reach, whereas Mauricio Lara is listed as 5'7", though I can't find his reach anywhere. But you know, both guys are comparable in size, and given how Lara fights, he doesn't really rely on his reach anyway. Leigh Wood is 34 years old, whereas Mauricio Lara is only 24 years old, so Mauricio Lara has the advantage of youth in this fight. You know, potentially there are less miles on the clock, you know, things of that nature. But, you know, you can argue that Leigh Wood has the experience going into this one. We'll see how that pans out. And, of course, both of these guys are orthodox fighters. Now the tale of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to win this fight. I think we know really what both guys' approach will be in this fight, especially in regards to Lara. I'll start with Lara actually. I believe he's the favourite going into this fight. I'll start with Lara. For me, Lara of course is a front foot fighter. He likes to apply that pressure, collapse the pocket, work the body, work at mid-range, hooking around the side, you know, uppercuts through the middle. He'll very often lead with hooks and things of that nature. Not a guy who primarily sets up his work off his jab, you know. He's one of those sort of guys, crash bang wallop, you know. He'll try and drown you in a sea of hard punches and essentially steal your will. He's that sort of guy. And I fully expect him to take that approach in this fight. However, given what he's got in front of him, I do believe Mauricio Lara in this fight needs to pay much more attention to defense. Leigh Wood is an astute counterpuncher, and he carries snappy power in his shots. He can certainly hurt his opponents. He's got enough power to. And as it stands right now, from what I've seen of Lara does leave a lot of holes, a lot of openings as he's applying pressure. He does have the tendency to come in straight lines. He does close the distance quickly, but his guard is way too porous. And the fact that he loads up with power shots as lead shots, again, leaves openings for astute counterpunchers. I think Lara in this fight needs to be mixing up his attack with that jab a little more, trying to jab his way in on Leigh Wood. You know, give Leigh Wood some different looks. Give him something different to think about. If Lara is consistently loading up with power shots, not jabbing his way in, not hooking off a jab, things of that nature, Leigh Wood may become accustomed to Mauricio Lara's attacks and patterns. I want to see Lara establish a jab in this fight. If he does that, I believe that makes his style that much more effective. I have seen Lara throw good power jabs, but he just doesn't do it enough for my liking. And yeah, I want to see him do that more in this fight. Jab his way in, you know, try to set up offense off that jab. And yeah, just give Leigh Wood some different looks in that regard. I also want to see Mauricio Lara tighten up his guard in this fight. One thing about Leigh Wood, he's a very good straight puncher. He's got a good jab and a good straight right hand, and a good counter straight right hand. For me, Mauricio Lara holds his hands way too far apart, leaves a giant opening down the middle, and in conjunction with that, Lara, like I said earlier, comes in straight lines, and he rarely takes his head off centre line. Sometimes he'll fight in a bit of a crouch, but he doesn't take his head off centre line. I think that Lara needs to make adjustments to try and be more defensively astute in this fight as he's applying pressure. Something as simple as having a tighter guard, for example, and even some basic side-to-side head movement wouldn't go amiss against a guy like Leigh Wood, considering how good he is at straight punches. I'm not expecting Lara to be Mike Tyson, but when he's approaching in that crouch, make sure that guard is tighter and try to move side to side a little bit. Make yourself harder to nail as you're coming in. So defensively, I think Lara needs to tidy up here, because based on what I saw against Warrington and I think it was Emiliano Sanchez, especially the Sanchez fight, he needs to tighten up in my opinion, because I believe Leigh Wood has the power to maybe make something happen. As well as that, of course, I want to see Lara really work that body. That is one thing he did against Josh Warrington tremendously well. Warrington, in that first fight, he held his feet far too often with Mauricio Lara. And on the inside and at mid-range, Lara was chewing him up to the body. We only really remember the headshots in that fight, but Lara did some tremendous bodywork in that fight, and I really felt that was effective at slowing Warrington down, who's a guy who maintains a good punch output. He's really physically fit, but the bodywork of Lara in that fight really paid dividends. I want to see more of that against Leigh Wood. I do have some question marks about Leigh Wood in terms of his overall durability, and adding bodywork, a consistent body attack on top of that, I could see that making Leigh Wood wilt that little bit quicker and open up shots to the head as well. So yeah, I think the bodywork for Lara is also going to be very, very important here. And overall, I think Lara, he needs to make a couple of minor adjustments, and he stands a very good chance of winning this fight. And I think he's got the power to knock out Leigh Wood. I think he's got the work rate to outwork Leigh Wood. I think he's a tougher man than Leigh Wood. Just needs a couple of adjustments in my opinion. As for Leigh Wood, I think he's up against it here a little bit. He can win, don't get me wrong, but I have to say, I do make him the underdog here. I think Leigh Wood in this fight, particularly early on, needs to be very careful. I would advise actually boxing on that back foot, trying to keep Mauricio Lara at arm's length and try to pick up some early rounds and not ship any unnecessary punishment, you know? If you go back and watch his fight with Michael Conlan, I felt he held his feet a bit too much early in that fight, and as a result, Michael Conlan was piecing him up. I know Conlan is a much different fighter than Lara, but Leigh Wood can't afford to play that macho game early on in this fight. I think that would be suicide. If he does that, I could see him getting knocked out early, to be honest. So if I'm Leigh Wood, I would actually be trying to box and move early on. Popping the jab, lateral movement, keeping Lara at arm's length, not giving Lara an opportunity to close that gap and fire off his power shots. Be a consistent moving target behind that jab. Make Lara reset, jab off the swivel, jab and spin out. Make Lara consistently reset, keep Lara off balance, and pick up the early rounds. And of course, look for the straight right hand when it presents itself. But when it comes to the straight right hand, I wouldn't be setting my feet too early on to throw that shot. I wouldn't be throwing that shot at full power early on. I'd be taking the early rounds to try and build up a lead and also try to get a gauge on Lara's patterns and then build off that as the fight progresses. And, providing he can get a good start in this fight and outbox Lara, win the early rounds, then you may start to see Lara getting more desperate. At that point in time, then maybe Leigh Wood can be looking at maybe holding his feet for that split second, firing that straight right hand down the pipe and trying to walk Mauricio Lara onto a big shot. As well as that, naturally there are going to be times when Lara, he will close that gap. Whether Leigh Wood's on the ropes or just stationary, he will close that gap and he will land hard shots. It's imperative in those moments that Leigh Wood doesn't get overawed and that he doesn't lose his head. He needs to be able to throw back in those moments. One shot in particular, right uppercut. Again, Lara comes in a bit of a crouch and he kind of leans in. And when you look at that, you see Lara, his head actually goes beyond his lead knee and his head is on center line. That is perfect territory for an uppercut. In the exchanges, if I'm Leigh Wood, I look for the uppercut. And I'd be looking for that shot as much as I can. I wouldn't want to go hook for hook with Mauricio Lara. He needs to be cute. He needs to be a little more crafty in those exchanges, because if he just goes hell for leather using his balls rather than his brain, again, I think it ends badly for Leigh Wood. So he needs to be conscious of picking punches in those exchanges. Lara he's going to be using all the brawn, all the strength, And again, I don't believe that Leigh Wood can match him in that regard. So he needs to be intelligent. He needs to be picking punches. And again, in those exchanges, I see the uppercut as a key punch for him. Not only that, I don't think it's a bad idea for Leigh Wood to vary that jab as well from body to head. Try to pop that jab into the solar plexus of Mauricio Lara. Again, changing levels with the jab, giving Lara something else to think about. Again, that can maybe set up a straight right hand down the line. But the jab to the body, I think, is a really underutilized punch in regards to draining your opponent's stamina. If you do that consistently, it does have an effect. Not only that, try and fire that straight right hand to the body as well when the opportunity presents itself. I wouldn't advise Leigh Wood to look for hooks to the body. Again, if they present themselves, take those shots, but I wouldn't make that a focal point. I wouldn't make that a strong focus in this fight. If he's to target the body, primarily with a jab, hard jab to the solar plexus, or a straight right hand, And I think as this fight plays out, Leigh Wood will, given the nature of this fight, I think it's going to be physically taxing, regardless. So yeah, I'd say box early on, but as this fight plays out, he's going to have to resort to that boxer-puncher style, which is primarily his style anyway. Kind of like, yeah, I'd say he's a boxer-puncher. And yeah, in those occasions, once again, it's the same thing. Try to maintain that range, behind that jab, try to double up the jab, and at this point in time, this is when he needs to start throwing power shots to really put Lara in his place as this fight progresses into the second half and final quarter. So yeah, start this fight as a boxer, see how that goes. Providing he wins the rounds, I would stick to that for as long as possible. and only then, when you have to, revert to that boxer-puncher style. Because again, I think if he holds his feet too early in this fight, it could be curtains. Don't get me wrong, Leigh Wood has the power to maybe make something happen. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe Leigh Wood needs to roll the dice here. I don't know, catch Lara cold. Maybe that could be a good strategy. But I think I would advise against it, personally. But regardless, I mean, this is a really good fight. This is a really, really good fight. I like Leigh Wood, I like his style. I mean, his last two performances have been very exciting. Beating Can Zhu when nobody expected it. Knocking out Michael Conlan in a tremendous fight. Leigh Wood in his last two fights has been really impressive. As has Lara. You know, beat Josh Warrington. Obviously, we know how the rematch went. But, you know, Lara's come back with another win since then. Or another couple of wins, maybe. And yeah, I mean, both guys are super exciting. I think both of these guys are fighters worthy of support. They fight in an exciting manner. And they seem pretty genuine in their desire to fight the best. So, you know, it's one of those rare fights where I support both guys. And yeah, may the best man win. But if you're asking for my prediction, I've got Mauricio Lara in this fight. I think Leigh Wood will have his moments. I wouldn't be surprised if Leigh Wood wins rounds and is doing well. Wouldn't be surprised if Lara gets hurt once or twice, maybe dropped. Wouldn't shock me. But I really believe that this fight's going to end up as a war of attrition. I believe that favours Mauricio Lara. And I think you'll see Lara get Wood out of there in rounds 7, 8 or 9. But it's going to be fun, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be violent, and somebody's getting knocked out. I think that somebody is going to be Leigh Wood. What about you guys? How do you see this fight going? I think it's a tremendous fight, I really do. Wouldn't shock me if this turns out to be a Fight of the Year contender. I'm expecting big things from this fight. It's actually the last fight I get to see before my DAZN subscription ends, so I'll enjoy this one. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Who are you picking and how? Share your predictions below. Been your guy Delboy. Peace.